They told us he was different, a male feminist who actually got it, a Hollywood heartthrob who spent years preaching vulnerability, telling men to embrace their emotions, to listen to women, to be better. He had the TED Talk, the book, the platform. Millions watched him cry on stage about redefining masculinity. And yet, behind the scenes of a film about escaping violence, something completely opposite was allegedly unfolding. One actress spoke up, and what followed wasn't justice. It was war, a coordinated attack designed to bury her reputation before she could tell her truth. Text messages surfaced, showing the plan in black and white. We can bury anyone, they said, and they tried. But when a federal judge finally read through the evidence, the verdict was clear. The man who built his career on being an ally had allegedly become exactly what he claimed to fight against.
The department's refusal to allow members of Congress to observe the conditions of DHS detention facilities. In fact, there is a specific statute that authorizes both Republicans and Democrats to conduct oversight over facilities that house or detain immigrants. But no, the department refuses. So we're here in the Homeland Security Committee, and I'm sure the Republican majority does not like it when this administration undermines its own authority, its own statutory authority to conduct oversight. But no, instead of all of that, we are here talking yet again about Joe Biden. Newsflash, Joe Biden is not the president. He hasn't been the president for 7 months. So if we are going to conduct oversight here, why are we doing it about the Biden administration when this administration is literally detaining lawful permanent residents and even some U.S. citizens? And it gets worse. It's not just those masked ICE agents. There are many FBI agents who are being called away from their duties to investigate terrorism, violent gangs, child trafficking, and other crimes in order to help ICE arrest and detain immigrants with legal asylum claims, nonviolent. That makes our homeland less safe, not more safe. So we should hear from FBI Director Kash Patel about how many of his criminal investigators are being taken away from their criminal investigatory jobs, keeping Americans safe in order to help round up non-criminal immigrants trying to immigrate the right way. Some of these detainees are being held in Bureau of Prisons detention centers that are unfit for convicted criminals to stay in. We should hear from Pam Bondi about how much of the department's resources are being used to detain these nonviolent, non-criminal immigration detainees. And while they're here, we can ask them about a very pressing question. What's going on with the Epstein files? Donald Trump promised to release them. Pam Bondi said she had the files on her desk and that she was going to release them in the name of transparency. Kash Patel has spent years railing against the FBI to release the files. Many of my Republican colleagues were banging on the table to release the Epstein files. But now, all of a sudden, after a months-long review, Bondi and Patel say nothing to see here, no evidence that any American would want to see about accomplices, co-conspirators, or other people's involved. Yesterday, the Republicans voted against releasing the files. So what's changed? Well, we all know Donald Trump has had a relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. He flew on his plane, he hung out at parties, spoke highly of him. And now there are many people saying that Donald Trump is included in the Epstein files. In fact, there are reporters who say that there are videos of him with topless women. Elon Musk even confirmed that Trump is blocking the release of these files because he's in them. Pam Bondi says there's nothing there, but Donald Trump even acknowledges that there is evidence there. It's just not credible. It's made up. This is a Truth Social post from 9:43 this morning. It is an admission that Donald Trump is in the Epstein files, and the American people deserve to know whether he is or not.
Mr. Garbarino is
Chairman, I would,
recognized for 5
pursuant to
minutes for
Clause
questioning.
2K6 of Rule
Gentleman is
11,
not recognized. Your time has
I
expired.
have a motion,
Mr. Garbarino
Chairman.
is recognized for...
The movie was supposed to be powerful. It ends with us, based on Colleen Hoover's best-selling novel about a woman escaping domestic violence, had everything going for it. Blake Lively as the lead, Justin Baldoni directing and co-starring, and a story that millions of readers had connected with on the deepest level. When casting was announced in early 2023, fans celebrated. This felt like the perfect match. Lively had the star power and emotional range. Baldoni had built his reputation on championing women's stories and seemed genuinely passionate about getting this film right. Production began with high hopes. The cast seemed excited. Social media posts showed smiling faces on set. Everything looked perfect from the outside. But according to what would later emerge in legal filings, the reality behind those smiles was drastically different. From the very beginning of filming, tensions were reportedly building. The atmosphere that was supposed to feel safe and collaborative allegedly felt anything but. And the woman at the center of it all was trying to figure out how to navigate a situation that was growing more uncomfortable by the day. Years before this film, Justin Baldoni had carefully constructed an image that made him stand out in Hollywood. He wasn't just another actor playing a heartthrob on Jane the Virgin. He wanted to be known as something more, someone who actually cared about changing the culture. His platform was called Man Enough, and it was everywhere. He hosted a web series where he sat down with other men in entertainment to have uncomfortable conversations about masculinity. He wrote a book about embracing vulnerability, and in 2017 he delivered a TED Talk that went massively viral. Almost 4 million people watched him stand on that stage and say the words that so many wanted to hear. He talked about how society conditions men to suppress their emotions, to view anything feminine as weak, to never cry, never show fear, never admit when they're wrong. He challenged his fellow men to be brave enough to be vulnerable, strong enough to be sensitive, confident enough to actually listen to women. The talk was titled, "Why I'm Done Trying to Be Man Enough," and it positioned him as a leader in the movement to redefine masculinity during the height of the Me Too era. Media outlets labeled him an outspoken feminist. He appeared on podcasts, gave interviews, and became a go-to voice whenever anyone wanted a man's perspective on gender equality. He even said in one interview that men need to believe all women, even when they accuse you. That quote would later feel impossibly ironic. Because the persona he presented to the world, the sensitive ally who understood the harm men cause, would soon be tested in the most public way imaginable. And according to the allegations that surfaced, it was all a performance. Filming continued through 2023, but Blake Lively was reaching a breaking point. According to the complaint she would later file, what was happening on set wasn't just unprofessional. It was creating an environment where she felt unsafe. The allegations were detailed and disturbing. Lively claimed that Baldoni repeatedly made inappropriate comments about her body and the bodies of other women on set, that he and producer Jamie Heath discussed their past experiences with adult content addiction and shared explicit details about their personal lives that no one had asked to hear, that Baldoni entered her trailer unannounced multiple times, including when she was undressed or breastfeeding her infant child. She alleged that during one incident, Heath walked in while she was topless and having body makeup removed, and when she asked him to turn around, she noticed he kept staring directly at her anyway. The complaints went further. Lively claimed Baldoni talked about communicating with her deceased father, which felt invasive and manipulative, that he pressured her to simulate full nudity in scenes that were never in the original script she had agreed to, that during filming of a birth scene, Heath showed her a video of his own wife giving birth completely naked, as if to justify why Lively should do the same. And perhaps most unsettling, she alleged that during a car ride, Baldoni casually mentioned engaging in activities without consent in his past. None of this was what she signed up for. By January 2024, after the actors' and writers' strikes had ended and production was set to resume, Lively knew she couldn't continue without changes. A meeting was called. Her husband, Ryan Reynolds, attended as her chosen representative. And in that room, Lively laid out her demands for returning to work. No more discussions about adult content. No more showing explicit videos or images. No more comments about her weight or body. No more entering her space without permission. No more adding intimate scenes that weren't in the approved script. And most importantly, an intimacy coordinator needed to be present during any scenes involving nudity or simulated encounters. According to the complaint, Sony Pictures, the film's distributor, approved all of her requests. Everyone agreed to the boundaries. Filming resumed. But what Lively didn't know was that behind the scenes, according to evidence that would later surface, something else was already being planned. The film finished production and was set for an August 2024 release. But as the premiere approached, something strange started happening. The press tour felt off. Fans noticed that Baldoni wasn't participating much in promotional events. Blake Lively was front and center, doing interviews with the rest of the cast, while the film's director seemed to have taken a back seat. Rumors of tension between the two stars began swirling. Then the backlash started. Online, people began criticizing Lively for her approach to promoting a film about domestic violence. She was accused of being too lighthearted, of not taking the subject seriously enough. Articles appeared questioning her behavior. Social media posts painted her as difficult to work with, as someone who had hijacked the film from its director. The narrative built rapidly. Lively, once beloved, was suddenly facing wave after wave of negative press. And it all seemed organic, like the internet had just collectively decided she was the problem. But it wasn't organic at all. On December 21st, 2024, the New York Times published an investigation that changed everything. Reporters had obtained thousands of text messages and communications that revealed a coordinated campaign. According to the documents, Baldoni and his team had hired crisis PR specialists with one goal in mind: to destroy Blake Lively's reputation before she could go public with her allegations. The text messages were chilling. One of Baldoni's publicists wrote to a colleague about how they wanted Lively to feel like she could be buried. Another message read, "We can't write, we will destroy her," but the intent was clear. They discussed planting theories on online message boards, engineering social media campaigns, and placing negative stories in the press. This wasn't damage control. This was preemptive warfare. And it was the same playbook used against other women who had spoken up in the past. The article's headline came from one of those text messages. "We can bury anyone inside a Hollywood smear machine." The public was stunned. Suddenly, all that supposedly organic backlash against Lively made sense. It had been manufactured. Hours after the Times investigation dropped, Blake Lively filed a formal complaint with the California Civil Rights Department, officially accusing Baldoni, Jamie Heath, and others involved in the film of creating a hostile work environment and retaliating against her for speaking up. That same day, she also filed a federal lawsuit in New York. The allegations were now public and legally documented. Baldoni's lawyer immediately fired back, calling the accusations categorically false, outrageous, and intentionally designed to harm his client's reputation. But Lively wasn't backing down. Her legal team released a statement making it clear this wasn't just about her experience on one film set. This was about a pattern of powerful men using their resources and connections to silence women who dare to report misconduct. And then Baldoni made his move. On January 16th, 2025, his legal team filed a massive countersuit seeking $400 million in damages. The lawsuit didn't just go after Lively. It named her husband Ryan Reynolds, her publicist Leslie Sloan, and even the New York Times as defendants. Baldoni's suit claimed that Lively had engaged in civil extortion, defamation, and interference with his business relationships. It accused her of fabricating the harassment allegations to take control of the film away from him. It painted Reynolds as a bully who had used his star power to intimidate Baldoni and pressure his talent agency to drop him as a client. And it accused the Times of running a hit piece based on manipulated evidence and one-sided reporting. The lawsuit was aggressive, detailed, and designed to flip the entire narrative. If Lively was accusing him of weaponizing PR, he was now accusing her of weaponizing fame and the media to destroy him. It was a legal strategy known in some circles as DARVO, deny, attack, and reverse victim and offender. Make the accuser defend themselves instead of answering the allegations. The battle was no longer just about what happened on a film set. It had become a war over who controlled the story. Baldoni made a tactical error. As part of his defense strategy, his legal team released edited footage from the set of It Ends With Us. The clips showed a scene where Baldoni and Lively were filming an intimate moment, and his lawyers argued the footage proved there was no harassment, that everything was professional and consensual. They thought the video would exonerate him. It had the opposite effect. Lively's attorneys immediately responded, pointing out that the footage actually supported her claims. In the video, you could see Baldoni repeatedly leaning into Lively's personal space, whispering in her ear, touching her, kissing her forehead and neck, rubbing his face against her skin, and at one point flicking her lip with his thumb. Her body language showed discomfort. She wasn't leaning in, she was tolerating it. And all of this was happening during a professional shoot with cameras rolling and crew members present. Lively's legal team stated that if this was how he behaved on camera in front of everyone, imagine what happened off camera. The footage didn't help Baldoni. It made things worse. Meanwhile, more evidence kept emerging. Text messages showed discussions about Baldoni's behavior from other people on set. One female cast member had reportedly filed her own complaint about his comments months before Lively did, but had been too afraid to come forward publicly. Others expressed discomfort, felt powerless to speak up. The picture being painted was no longer just one actress with a grudge. It was a pattern. Then came June 9th, 2025. Federal Judge Louis Lyman issued his ruling on Baldoni's lawsuit against Lively, and he didn't just dismiss parts of it, he threw out the entire case. In his decision, Judge Lyman made it clear that Lively's harassment allegations were legally protected speech because they were part of a formal legal proceeding. Baldoni couldn't sue someone for defamation over claims they made in an official complaint filed with a civil rights agency. That's not how the law works. The judge also found no evidence that Lively or her publicist had acted with actual malice or knowingly spread false information. He ruled that Leslie Sloan, Lively's publicist, had simply been doing her job by representing her client's account to the media. And regarding the New York Times, the judge stated that the newspaper had reviewed the available evidence and reported on what it believed happened, even if in a dramatized manner. That's protected journalism. The 132-page opinion systematically dismantled every claim Baldoni's team had made. It was a total loss. Within days, major consequences followed. WME, one of Hollywood's most powerful talent agencies, dropped Baldoni as a client. His insurance company refused to cover his legal defense costs, arguing he had brought this on himself. And the New York Times, which had also been sued by Baldoni for $250 million, countersued him for their legal fees and court costs. The feminist ally who had spent years building a brand around listening to women and believing survivors was now the one being publicly discredited by a federal court. But the legal war wasn't over. Despite the devastating court loss, Baldoni's team wasn't giving up. His lawyer continued to insist that Lively had orchestrated a smear campaign and that all the evidence was manipulated. Meanwhile, Lively filed an amended complaint in February 2025 that included even more evidence and new witnesses. She demanded millions in damages under California's anti-SLAPP law, a statute specifically designed to punish people who file baseless lawsuits to silence those who speak up about harassment. The case was now set for trial in March 2026, more than a year away. And in the meantime, both sides continued their public battle. Every new filing brought fresh headlines. Every statement from the lawyers was dissected by the media. The story had become one of the most closely watched legal battles in Hollywood, not just because of the celebrities involved, but because of what it represented. This wasn't just about one film set. It was about power, about who gets believed, and about the tactics used to silence accusers. Baldoni's former publicist, Stephanie Jones, even had to file her own legal response after being accused of leaking information. She insisted she had only produced materials in response to a legal subpoena, not as some voluntary act of betrayal. The whole situation kept expanding, pulling more people into its orbit. And through it all, one question kept resurfacing. How does someone who spent years publicly advocating for women end up accused by multiple women of the exact behavior he claimed to oppose? The irony is almost too perfect to be real. Here was a man who made millions telling other men to be better, to listen, to check their behavior, to believe women even when it's uncomfortable. He stood on stages and spoke about vulnerability. He wrote books about emotional growth. He hosted conversations about dismantling toxic masculinity. And yet, if the allegations are true, he was allegedly perpetuating that exact toxicity behind closed doors while building a public brand that said the opposite. Some observers have pointed out that this is a pattern. The loudest male allies sometimes turn out to be the ones using that identity as a shield. They perform feminism publicly while privately behaving in ways that contradict everything they claim to believe. And when they're called out, they don't reflect. They attack. They hire PR teams and lawyers. They file massive lawsuits designed to intimidate. They flip the script and make themselves the victim. It's a playbook that's been used before, and it works because it confuses people. It makes the public question who to believe. But the courts don't operate on public opinion. They operate on evidence. And in this case, the evidence was damning enough that a federal judge dismissed an entire $400 million lawsuit without hesitation. That doesn't happen unless the claims are genuinely without merit. The legal system isn't perfect, but when a judge reads through thousands of pages of evidence and says there's nothing here, that tells you something. For Blake Lively, speaking up came at an enormous cost. Her reputation was dragged through the mud for months before the truth started coming out. She faced coordinated attacks from publicists, online harassment from people who believed the manufactured narrative, and a legal battle that has consumed over a year of her life. But she also did something that many people in her position don't have the resources or courage to do. She fought back. She hired lawyers. She filed complaints with government agencies. She sued. And she didn't back down when the other side tried to bury her under a mountain of counterclaims. Her decision to speak out has already had ripple effects. Other women who worked on the film have started coming forward with their own accounts. Conversations are happening in the industry about how to actually enforce safety protocols on set. And most importantly, the playbook that powerful men use to silence accusers is now being exposed in real time for everyone to see. The March 2026 trial will likely bring even more evidence to light. More text messages, more witness testimony, more details about what really happened on that set and what was planned behind the scenes. But regardless of how the trial ends, the damage to Baldoni's carefully crafted image is already done. The feminist icon who told men to embrace vulnerability is now facing federal accusations of creating a hostile work environment and retaliating against a woman who dared to set boundaries. And maybe that's the real story here, not just what one person allegedly did or didn't do, but what happens when people challenge power, when someone speaks up and refuses to be silenced, when the machine designed to bury them fails because the evidence is too strong to ignore. Because this isn't just about Hollywood. It's about every workplace where someone has been harassed and told to stay quiet. Every situation where power protects itself by attacking the person who calls it out. Every time a victim becomes the defendant in their own story because the other side has better lawyers and bigger budgets. Blake Lively had resources. She had a famous husband, a good legal team, and enough financial stability to fight a prolonged battle. But most people don't. Most people who experience what she described would have no choice but to walk away quietly, take the settlement, sign the NDA, and let the person who harmed them continue on with their career intact. That's how the system is designed to work. And that's exactly why cases like this matter. Because every time someone with a platform refuses to play along, it makes it a little bit harder for the next person to be silenced. It exposes the tactics, it shows the text messages, it reveals the playbook, and it forces the public to confront an uncomfortable truth. That the people we admire, the ones who say all the right things, might be performing for us while doing the exact opposite when the cameras are off. So what's the takeaway from all of this? Maybe it's that words are cheap, that anyone can stand on a stage and talk about believing women, about being an ally, redefining masculinity. But the real test isn't what you say in public. It's how you treat people when no one's watching. It's whether you respect boundaries when someone sets them. It's what you do when you're told your behavior is making someone uncomfortable. Do you listen and change? Or do you hire a crisis PR team and prepare for war? The answer to that question reveals who someone really is. And in this case, the evidence suggests that the man who built a career telling other men to be better allegedly couldn't live up to his own advice. The trial is still months away. More will come out. There will be more statements, more filings, more headlines. But the foundation of this case has already been established. A federal judge looked at the evidence and said Lively's claims were credible enough to be legally protected. An entire lawsuit designed to punish her for speaking up was thrown out. And the publicists who allegedly planned to bury her are now the ones being buried by their own text messages. If you believe that people in power should be held accountable regardless of their public persona, if you believe that speaking up shouldn't result in retaliation, and if you believe that the truth matters more than reputation management, then this story should matter to you, because it's not over. The battle continues. But for once, the person who spoke up is still standing. And the machine designed to destroy her is the one that's crumbling.